Last night the U.S. Senate went ahead and passed that $1.5 trillion funding bill that includes about $14 billion in Ukraine aid. So it avoids a government shutdown. But now the question becomes getting that aid to Ukraine as Russian soldiers begin to close off more and more port cities to which that aid would presumably arrive. It is a worry for my next guest. Joining us right now, Texas Republican Congressman Pat Fallon. Congressman, great to see you. Given the fact that the Russians seem to have a strategy of trying to take very violently on going after a lot of just regular folks, port cities, Mariupol is just the latest. How would that aid get to Ukraine?
Well, Neil, thanks for having me on. That's one of the reasons why I signed on to a letter back in November led by ranking members Rogers and Inhofe to get as much asymmetrical aid, military aid, that we could get to the Ukrainians back then in November when those ports were wide open and fully functioning. But fortunately, we do have 4 NATO allies that border the Ukraine. And that's Poland, Romania, Slovakia, and Hungary. And there's, you know as well as I, where there's a will, there's a way. So we can airlift a lot of it in, but most of it, the majority of it's going to have to go by ship, of course. And we do have the Baltic ports up in Poland, and then we'd have to obviously use the land route to get it into the Ukraine.
Congressman, while I have you here, we had General Jack Keane with us, and sentiments, by the way, that were echoed by General Boykin. This upping the ante on the part of the Russians if they ever entertain the use of chemical weapons. The Russians say that's not going to happen, that it was a vicious rumor started by America. But both generals were telling me if they went that route, all bets are off. This war is widened automatically. Do you agree?
Yeah, yes, absolutely, Neil. I mean, right now, any use of nuclear, biological, or chemical weapons would change the game irreversibly. And then we'd really have to look at where we go from there. Because right now, I think what we need to do is get, as I said before, as much asymmetrical aid, military aid, and economic and humanitarian aid we can get to the Ukrainians as possible. And that includes anti-ship, the Harpoon missiles we have, the Stingers, which are anti-aircraft, the Javelins, which has been very effective against Russian tanks, but also plastic explosives, sniper rifles, the American version of the RPG, light machine guns, and as much ammunition as we can get. Because, Neil, you know that nothing can harness more power than a democracy enraged, and we're seeing that with the Ukrainian freedom fighters right now.
Now, we're getting mixed signals, Congressman, out of Vladimir Putin about what's going on. Earlier, the markets were buoyed, just average folks were buoyed by talk that he was seeing positive developments in peace talks. But his actions reflect quite a different point of view. Obviously, soldiers that continue their airstrikes throughout the country, particularly Western Ukraine. And he has already announced that he's sending troops in the Middle East to the Ukraine. He's put out a worldwide call for volunteers to join the good fight, paraphrasing his remarks. So which is it? The peaceful, promising, positive developments, Putin, or the guy who's up in the ante?
So we got to always remember he's a former KGB agent. He's a professional liar, and he's a chess player as well. And the Soviets and now the Russians have been pretty much lying to the world for about 100 years. You remember Pravda and TASS? I mean, they couldn't tell a straight story if you paid them to. So you never know with him. But actions are going to speak louder than words. And we've seen reports of as many as 5,000 to 6,000 Russian soldiers killed in action in the first 2 weeks. That is an astronomically high casualty rate. And if that's indeed the case, and also maybe 100 to 200 of their tanks being taken out, they can't sustain this. This is a war of attrition, and it's a war of attrition they'll lose, provided we can arm the Ukrainians.
Congressman, thank you very, very much. Congressman Pat Fallon of Texas.